Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roy Ka-Wei. You can just call me Roy. So I come from Singapore. Anyone of you been to Singapore yet? No? Oh, I see a few hands. Interesting. Cool. Yeah, we offer scholarships as well for visiting students. So we welcome you guys to visit as well. I'll share a little bit more towards the end of the talk itself. Okay? So today I'm going to talk about a topic on online trust and safety, on hate speech in particular. It's a little bit different from the previous sharing that is a little bit more technical. So what I'm going to share with you is more problem-oriented, more applied in a way. And of course, we'll go through some of the technical challenges that we face in this line of research also. Okay? Right, so maybe perhaps a little bit more about myself. Again, I'm Roy. I'm an assistant professor in the computer science department from SUTD. We are one of the youngest university in Singapore. We started off with MIT in, I think, 15 years ago. Okay, so our university worked very closely with MIT. Our students, our faculty exchange frequently with that university. Okay, I myself, I'm running this lab called the Social AI Studio. These are a few of the topics that I'm looking at, like user profiling in social media. We do quite a fair bit of work in social media. Online safety and cyber abuse research, which is actually what I'm going to talk about today. Social natural language generation is like your ChatGPT and all. We do quite a fair bit of dialogue systems, text generation, and so on and so forth as well. And the last part is more on social recommendation. For example, recommending you friends, content on the different social media platforms. So these are things that we look at. Today I'm going to discuss one part of my research, which is on the online safety and trust part. Actually, I have other appointments as well, where I look at the online safety for the Singapore space. We have been looking at it quite a fair bit on a wide range of tasks, from fake news to deep fake and all sorts. But today, I specifically want to address a different topic on hate speech, and this is what I'm going to cover more in today's topic. Okay, this is a warning that I need to give to everyone in all the talks that I've given globally. So the following talks contains a lot of violence, a lot of discriminations that might be disturbing to some participants. So discretion is advised, okay? But I'm sure most of you here are of age, right? If you can drink beer, you can probably listen to this talk. Okay, yeah, so it should be okay, cool. So right, maybe we discuss about, first up, what exactly is hate speech, right? So hate speech is a huge problem. I think some of you might have encountered hate speech online or even offline. Korea is a big nation with cyber games, right? Online esports, right? So I think you have encountered quite a fair bit of it if you are playing games on hate speech online. But this is the official definition on what exactly hate speech is. The UN defines hate speech as any form of communications that attacks, or discriminate a particular person based on who they are or what they call protected characteristics in this. Okay, and it's in this particular case, it's based on religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is exactly what hate speech official definition is. Okay. Where to find them? As I mentioned, I think hate speech can be encountered everywhere online. It can be on social media, your Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, KakaoTalk, and all that, right? Online forums as well, like your Reddits and stuff. Even community Q&As. If you guys are familiar with Quora, and for com science students, you're probably familiar with Stack Overflow, right? Even Stack Overflow, you get people fighting each other and scolding each other as well, right? So there is a lot of hate online. The last one is probably online games. So online games is something that we are seeing quite a fair bit of hate speech encountering, in online games. And it can occur in all sorts of forms, right? Not just in text, in audio. It could also be in memes, in videos, and many other different multimedia formats. Okay. So why should we be concerned, right? Well, the thing about hate speech is that it's a fast and growing problem. It's a menacing problem as well. Online hate speech may lead to offline crimes. I'm not sure whether Korea has this, but in the western side of the house, this gets very violent. Okay, so in UK, this particular chart actually shows. Let me just put this on. Right, this particular chart actually shows, the amount of hate crimes actually increased in UK, particularly England and Wales, quite a fair bit over the years. Okay, in fact, I think there is still increase in recent years. And if in US, where guns are, more available, you may result in gun violence as well in this. In our region, in Singapore and Southeast Asia, we are also seeing a bit of manifestation of this as well in countries like Myanmar, Malaysia, and of course in Singapore as well. Sometimes, we know that Singapore is a very safe country, but we still get a bit of that offline in terms of hate crime. But of course, it may not be as violent as US, where you have guns and all, but we still encounter that. So of course, because of this, there's an increased concern by the government and the lawmakers. Globally, if you pay attention to this work, there is a lot of discussion on whether to pass hate speech law globally, and remains a debate. So in US, it is always trying to balance between free speech and hate speech moderation. How much of it is acceptable? So when they ask, right, should government prevent hate speech, right? So 59% of them says that we should allow hate speech in the idea that to protect freedom of speech. But at the same time, when they ask, right, do you think hate speech is morally acceptable? Most of them says that, yeah, I don't think it's acceptable, right? Majority of them say so. But they think it's unacceptable, but at the same time, they don't want to enact the law to basically protect it. That's what's happening in the western side of the world. In Singapore, we just passed our own online safety bill not too long ago. I think it's about a year ago that we passed this. And we are enforcing tighter controls, particularly targeting youths and teenagers. Okay, but it's not so much on hate speech, but all sorts of online harms, like, for example, fake news, right, deep fakes, or specifically ads that's targeting teenagers, right? So this is what we are concerned about. And of course, because of this, companies now are very concerned. I work very closely with the different social media companies like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and so on and so forth. And they are very worried about this, that they are trying to fight they are trying very hard to fight online hate speech on this social media platform. The truth is, I think the social media companies, right, are not that concerned about this. They are concerned because the governments are fining them about it, right? So because the governments are pretty hands tight, and then they are actually passing out certain laws, having tighter controls. Now the social media companies or the different companies, right, has to do more to basically combat this online hate speech. It used to be that the folks who are at the forefront encountering this are all the social media company, but lately the AI companies are getting this as well. So your Gemini, your ChatGPT, in the earlier version of it, you can post a lot of hateful contents or ask you to generate a lot of hateful contents. Even your Meta Llama versions, right? You have a lot of that. But from Llama 1 to Llama 2 and now Llama 3 and 3.2, there is a lot of safety or safeguards or guardrails that have been built into it to prevent the mechanism from generating hate speech, right? So this is the evolution of it. The companies are actually putting a lot of effort to basically combat hate speech on this. It used to be that there is a lack of automated methods in detecting and moderating hate speech. What they do is to hire an army of content moderators. Okay, so for example, if you look at things like TikTok, they still hire a lot of content moderators. If you flag a particular content to say it's hateful, it is sexual, it is fake or whatnot, there is actually a human behind the scene that will moderate this. But as TikTok scale to billions of users, this is no longer scalable, right? They need automated solutions to basically handle this. Okay, so in the past, maybe 3-4 years ago, there was a lack of automated tools, but because it is becoming a huge market, right now it's no longer lagging. There's a lot of different companies that has been set up to basically offer these kind of solutions to the different media companies. Okay, and I know some of these folks who were very in the early stage of doing this kind of research, They are now millionaires, selling their companies to the different social media companies and AI companies to do content moderation. It's a huge market capitalization. OpenAI's new content moderation tool is a gift to developers. Even OpenAI is actually looking at this as well. Okay, so it's a huge market. There is a lot of content moderation solutions out there, and people are still never getting enough of it, particularly in this side of the world. So I know a founder that is offering this service in Korea because OpenAI and many of these big companies, they don't offer content moderation in Korean. So, that language advantage is good. So that company actually started looking at moderating contents on Twitch, if I'm not wrong, right, for Korean content. So yeah, this is a huge market. So if you're interested in this, this is something that you can consider, right? Right, then it comes to a part about what we are doing, right? So as I mentioned, this is one of the 4 pillars of work that my studio is actually working on. The students, the researchers who are in this subgroup are very productive. They've been publishing quite a fair bit, making me very stressful because I need to find money to support them, to travel for conferences and all. So we actually done a lot of research on hate speech research over the last 3 to 4 years. As you can see, many of these papers are actually more recent, right? That we have from EMNLP, ACL, web conference, so on and so forth. Okay. So we look at all sorts of hate speech research from, text-based, regulating, contributing hateful text data sets to, performing text detections, hateful content, text-based, to explaining why a particular content is considered hateful, and trying to study, how hate propagates online, so on propagation. We even launched a tool. So right now there's a tool that we have launched that can crowdsource moderation. So this is done in the recent web conference. We also studied quite a fair bit on the hateful memes detection part. So memes is quite a viral thing online. So how do we moderate this kind of memes, detecting them, explaining them, is something that we look at. The most recent one that we're going to present in Australia next month is on hateful video detection. We have just collected a new data set on hateful videos on 2 platforms, on 2 languages, if I'm not wrong. So this is what we have been doing for the video part. Recent work also we look at that just got accepted to EMNLP. We look at cross-modality. How can we train on text and then use it to moderate content on memes or on image, and reverse, right, from image to text? This is something that we are looking at, and of course we have a survey on this. Now, as you can see, we have done quite a fair bit of work on hate speech, and there is no way I can cover this in another half an hour. So instead, the way I look at it is that I'm going to tell you where we fail instead of where we succeed. Okay? So the way I like to look at research is always looking at the problem and looking at what is unsolved. Okay? So I'm going to tell you some of the research that we have done, the limitations of our research, and then where are the gaps that we hope to partner everyone that's in here, to look at future research in this space. Okay? So I'm going to talk about 2 parts. One, the issues with the data set itself, and number 2, the issues with the model itself. Okay, and of course we can end off to talk about what is there in store for us for future. Right, so let's start with the dataset part first. So for folks who are not familiar with hate speech detection, this work has been there for quite some time. I think it got its popularity since pre-COVID days. Okay, I think it's 2018, 2017 that there is a lot of new hate speech data set that emerged online. These are the few popular ones. If you have been working on hate speech detection for quite some time, you'll be probably familiar with them. But the issue with this text-based hate speech data set is that it's very explicit. So if it's using vulgarities, profanities, and all that, it's very easy to detect because if you have that lexicon, you can easily identify them, right? So explicit hate speech typically is easier to moderate. And this part is the common part that I think all the different companies have been doing quite well on this. So in recent years, things have started to change. They realized that hate speech cannot be that easy. If it's that easy, then this problem would have been solved. Then they look at other things, right? So for example, hate speech is not always so direct. For example, it's not always, I hate you, I want to kill you. It may not be that way, right? So it's something that's more subtle. They are using things that are more sarcastic. So CMU actually launched this new data set called the latent hatred to study implicit hate speech. Okay, so the group from CMU was actually looking at this, and they had a paper in 2021 on this. Then, of course, there is a lot of work, because the good news is that hate speech only makes up less than 10% of the content you encounter online. So because of this, it is an outlier detection problem. You don't have enough content. You don't have enough hate speech to train your model, right? So what others have also explored is to basically generate hate speech to supplement, the training part. So data augmentation is something that has been explored also in this space. The recent one is, of course, from Toxigen, ACL 2022. And of course, folks have been going beyond text also, as I mentioned. They no longer look at just text-based. Facebook launched a challenge called the Hateful Memes Challenge from 2020. I think they released about 10,000 memes for training. And it was a huge challenge that started a new line of research to detect hateful memes. Okay, and of course, we just did one ourselves as well in Singapore to look at hateful memes in multilingual context in Southeast Asia. Okay, but the issue that we face is this, right? Many of these data set that is available out there are still in English. So what about other culture? What about Korea, right? What about Singapore? What about other parts of Southeast Asia? Good news is that if you're working on hate speech, Korea has, I think, one data set right now. I think it's called COE, if I'm not wrong. That data set is pretty awesome. You can check that out on moderating hate speech in Korean. Okay, but for many other languages in Southeast Asia, we don't have that. Like Thai, Vietnamese, Laos, we don't have that, right? And what's so unique about this then, right? What's so unique about Singapore or Southeast Asia in terms of language? Well, the thing about us is that we have a huge linguistic diversity. There is many language, many dialects that's being used in our region. And to understand the slangs and the region-specific expression, right, is very difficult. Okay, and of course, there's cultural nuances. For example, interpreting the context of content is very different. So I give you an example, right? In Korea, when you are taking the escalator, right? If you are standing, do you stand on the left or you stand on the right? You stand on the right, right? For your right. In Singapore, we stand on the left. So there is a lot of different cultural elements that's in this, that's inbuilt to our daily life that your LLM, your large language models cannot understand. You could also try this on your ChatGPT. Describe to me how a typical wedding is like. Then the generated content is always, the bride will be in white, the man will be in tuxedo and all. Is that how a Korean wedding looks like? May not be, right? So how do we address this, right? There is always a cultural element in this. And, in our challenge, we are not just looking at one single culture like Korea. We are looking at multiple cultures because we are looking at a region of countries. Okay, so that becomes very difficult, right? Even hand gesture is very different. Okay, and of course, we need to consider things like the social political issues as well, right? There is always like historical backdrops to this, and what is considered hateful. There is always a lot of like social element that involve in this as well. Okay, and this is one of the work that we produced this year. So we had a paper this year with NACL, one of the workshop on online harms, on SGH check. So this is a framework or data set, okay, that we use to detect hate speech in Singapore main languages. 4 language in total. Okay, it builds on the existing hate check framework. So the angle is this. Okay, we try to create a functional hate speech data set that captures Singapore linguistic diversity, mainly in 4 languages: English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil. Okay, so this is what we were looking at. Now, what we actually aim to do is to do this. We are trying to benchmark the hate speech detector. We want to know how well this hate speech detector, right, are actually doing in terms of regulating hate speech in our language. Okay, so this is what this data set is designed for. Okay, so we want to do this hate speech benchmark creating this data with specifically crafted statement to test to see whether these language models, right, are able to detect or flag out that this content is hateful. Okay, we include things like that's very direct, so direct forms of hate, like I hate women, so this is very direct hate speech. You could also switch out the different group. Instead of looking at gender, we look at, let's say, immigrants. Okay, we can also craft different form of hate speech as well. So like women's should be done in the landfill, right? So this is very hateful, right? But it's in a different form of hate speech from the original direct one. And of course, there are non-hateful representation that we also included in here as well. Okay. So why do we need this? Well, it helps us to quickly categorize the hate speech detector. There is we want to establish a common standard to compare the different forms of hate speech detector. Okay, and we want to make it adaptive as well. So we want to adapt to the fast-paced change in the hate speech. So this is how we design it. Okay, later I'll go through how do we arrive at this. Using a placeholder, using template. How do we design this? Okay. As I mentioned, this is from a series lines of work. We got this. In fact, this work was working with Oxford University on this. So Paul Rotters, that group, they have been looking at this from Oxford side on hate check, and then we did the extension it to Singapore, and now we are actually working the one for Southeast Asia, including more languages and all. So this is what we are looking at the moment. Okay. All together, I think in SG hate check we created about 21,000 test cases, all annotated, and then in Singlish, Malay, Mandarin, and Tamil. Singlish is the Singapore version of English that we use. There is a certain context that they use it. Okay. Right. So this is the pipeline that we use to construct this data set. Okay. So we start off with identifying the targets and placeholder. Okay, do templates creation, formulate the test cases, annotate, and then benchmark the LM. I'll go through step by step. How do we do this? Okay, the first step is always difficult, which is if you are constructing a hate speech data set, right? First of all, you need to know the definition of hate speech, which actually is what we have adopted from UN. The next problem that you need to deal with is who are we protecting? So, what category should we protect, right? For example, the current hate speech protected characteristics, right, are all written based on the Western culture. It may not apply here in Korea. It may not apply in Singapore. So we need to recheck on this. So we look at the local laws and regulation. We decide, discuss with the social science experts to see which are the protected groups that we should protect in Singapore. And of course, we want to identify certain slurs that's associated to these different groups, right? So this is what we have. Okay. And then we started off by doing this template creation. So basically, what we did was we used LLM, GPT 3.5, GPT 4, and Google to basically do translation for these templates. Okay, so this is the prompt that we use. Then, it comes up with these particular templates, right? I hate you dash this particular protected characteristics a lot. Now, when you generate this kind of templates, basically you can substitute this identity with the different protected groups on this very easily. Okay, so of course, these templates may not work always for the different groups. Okay, later we will see there is a step to handle this. But for cases with different choice, and there's no manual input, the human annotator will come in to basically generate the template itself. Okay, for example, certain slurs are only used for certain type of groups that will never be used for something else. Okay, so that's how they actually look at it. Okay. So the next part is to combine to form the test cases. We take the placeholder plus the templates. The placeholders are basically the protected groups that we have identified. The templates are those that is generated. We just substitute them, and then you get the test cases. Okay, this is how we generate all the different test cases. Very simple idea. Okay, the test cases are developed in 4 languages, as I mentioned. So the templates itself is already in 4 languages. It covers hate speech on different scenarios, such as slurs, derogatory remarks, threats, so on and so forth. Okay, it also includes the non-hateful profanity part. Okay, and altogether we have 21,000 test cases created. Okay. Now the interesting thing is that, as I mentioned, we need to do some quality control. The generated content may not be always good, right? So that's where the human annotators comes in. Okay, so for each of these test case, we get 2 to 3 annotators to annotate. What they are annotating is deciding whether the generated test case is hateful, non-hateful, or nonsensical. Because the generated test case is artificial, it may not make sense, right? So we drop all those that are nonsensical, okay? And we only accept if the majority annotation matches the template label, okay? So this is what we did. And then, for example, the template is hateful, and 2 out of 3 annotators say that it's hateful, we accept that, okay, sure, this is a reasonable test case that we include, okay? And then we use this to basically benchmark the different LLMs, okay? So these are the fields that we benchmark. Why this field? The reason is because these are the only few LLMs that can basically do Tamil, Malay, and Mandarin, and Singlish, okay? So these are the few that we use. I want to specially mention Sea Lion. This is the model from Singapore. We built it and trained it from ourselves using Singapore language. Okay, we spend quite a lot of money on this. Yeah, but by the government. Okay, so we fine tune with hate speech data set. So we fine tune on English hate speech that we can find. There is also a multilingual data set that we try to source online to basically train this. Notice that there isn't Tamil because we can't find a Tamil multilingual hate speech data set out there. Okay, and this is the prompt that we use. Basically, just input and ask it whether it's hateful or not. Output, tell me whether it's 0 or 1 hateful or not, right? Okay. This is the result. Good news and bad news. Some language works very well. Some language doesn't perform so well. So for example, Mistral and CLM performs relatively well in Singlish, Malay, and Mandarin hate speech detection. When we say well, it's in the range of like 0.8, 0.7, so it's pretty good, right, in terms of accuracy. The issue is Sea Lion, our own model, performed quite badly. We submitted this report to the government on this, and then there's quite a fair bit of things that they did to release the next version of Sea Lion. And all the models, right, are performing very badly on Tamil. Okay, so this is a difficult task. So Tamil remains the difficult language in here, as you can see, right? Everything is in red. So for languages that's really, really low resource, it's not going to perform so well. My suspicion is that if we do something for Korea is probably going to be in the case of 0.7 to 0.8. It's going to be pretty okay because there is enough resource. But if it's low resource, then it's going to be a problem. Okay? Right, so any thoughts on the limitation for SGH check? As I mentioned, right, I'm here to share about failures as well. So in my opinion, I think SGH check is not quite good yet, partly because of the obvious limitation, which is it lacks diversity. So for example, many of these things are generated by templates, right? So it may not be that good. It limits the diversity of the test case. So this is a problem. It may not capture the evolving cultural nuances. So for example, right, if you all play with memes and all, there will always be new terms that's created, right? Targeting, humans are very creative when it comes to insulting each other. Right? You'll create very interesting insults on your friends or your enemies, right? So yeah, it doesn't capture this. How do we handle this? This is a problem. But one thing I want to share about this is that SGH checks, right, turns out to be the first framework that we use in Singapore to try to perform toxicity safeguard for Sea Lion. Some of you might be thinking that, hate speech detection is a very small committee that don't have a huge upside for research. In fact, OpenAI, Gemini, and all, we work with, we've been having discussion with them on this. One of the main use case for now hate speech detector, right, is to do this toxicity safeguard. If you ask a particular question, right, generate for me, you write an email, and in your email, right, you have very hateful languages targeting someone or targeting a particular group. The LM, OpenAI from like ChatGPT, Gemini is going to reject you. Anthropic, right, they are going to reject you. Why? Because behind the scene, there is a toxicity safeguard that checks that the content that you're asking for, be the input or the output, is very toxic. So this is where this is actually being used. So we are trying to create this. It's a balance. Why I say it's a balance? They don't want, you don't want a particular LM that's going to say no to you always, right? but you also don't want an LLM that's going to generate a content that the government is going to complain about it. So how do we draw that balance? This is where this is actually very difficult. So we are trying to figure this out also. Okay, so this is more of the actual use case for having a CH check or this kind of like hate speech data set, okay, or hate speech detector. Cool? Okay, so I'll quickly move on to talk about the content moderation part, the modeling part. Hate speech detection is not a very difficult task, I would say. It's very easy to understand. It's a text classification task in the past. So it's always like, given a text, we aim to predict whether it's hateful or not, right? So it's just a classification task, text classification. You can actually use traditional machine learning approach to do text classification. You could also use deep learning approach to do this. And of course, in recent years, they have been looking at things like trying to explain hateful content. Given a text, explain why is it hateful and why is it not hateful, okay? So the last one is particularly important. It helps content moderators to understand, flag content better, okay? So, and this is where your ChatGPT comes about, right? We did a study, right, to understand this. So when ChatGPT came about, it was 3.5. We asked, right, is it possible to use ChatGPT or, GPT-3 or 4 to basically help in hate speech moderation? For example, right, I said, okay, is the following tweet, hateful? So you ask the model. But in the past, you can still ask this. Now you can't do this because OpenAI has already implemented a safeguard. You can't ask this question anymore, okay? And that results in a paper last year from HKKU. We tried to study this. By the way, this comes from an actual use case because I cannot name who, but one of the social media company was asking us whether they can use ChatGPT or this kind of large language models, right, to help content moderation. What do you mean by help? For example, in the case of Korea, your content, let's say on YouTube, right, your content moderators, right, may not be in Korea. The person can be sitting in Philippines, sitting in Malaysia, regulating the content. So for example, a particular person sitting here flags out a YouTube video that's in Korean saying that this is hateful. That request, right, that flag out, right, doesn't circulate to someone who sits inside here in Korea. The person, the content moderators can be sitting elsewhere. Why? Because it's cheaper to hire a content moderator to content moderate elsewhere because the wages and the cost of Koreans are actually higher versus some from another developing country. Okay, so that introduces a few problems. Number one, the person who is sitting in another country may not understand the cultural context of Korea, right? Minimally, the person will go through simple simple training like understanding Korean. So minimally, the person who is moderating Korean content will understand Korean, but the person may not understand your culture that well. So what they try to do is this. Is it possible to get an LM to explain, given this particular content that's being flagged up by the user, why is it hateful? Right? Supplement with the explanation so that the content moderators that don't understand the Korean culture so well will be able to know, why the user say this is considered hateful. Okay, so this is what this is actually trying to do. And we are trying to emulate this in this particular study from HKKU 2023. Okay, so this is the goal. We want to evaluate whether GPT-3 or 3.5 is able to assist in hateful content moderation by providing suitable explanation for the flagged content. I need to say the content has already been flagged out. Okay, so now we are just evaluating this. Okay, so to what extent that so we asked a few research questions. To what extent the explanation generated by ChatGPT for hateful content demonstrates quality of being fluent, informative, persuasive, and logically sound. You're just explaining or evaluating the quality of the generation. Okay. Then we ask this question. We say, how persuasive is a GPT-3 explanation, and does that effectiveness of persuasion varies with different prompting strategy? We're trying to understand whether prompts plays a role in this. And of course, the most important question is that does the use of ChatGPT result in incorrect decision in the hateful content moderation? Okay, this is what we worry most about. Okay, so this is the framework that we propose. Okay, it looks complex, but it's very easy. We are just using, let's say, GPT-3 to do the explanation generation. So this is in 2013, so it's 2023. Once they generate this, then you use a crowdsourcing platform. I think we get 2,400 people to basically rate the generated content. Okay. So step one is to generate. We generate using 3 kinds of prompts. We ask, why is, for example, please explain why this tweet is hateful or non-hateful. So for a single tweet, we generate both. Ask you to explain why is it hateful, why is it not hateful. And then we use the chain of thought example as well. So same, please explain why this tweet is hateful or non-hateful, and let's think step by step. Okay? And the last one, we don't say whether it's hateful or not hateful. We just ask the model, what's the context of this particular tweet? Okay? So 3 prompting strategy that we explore. This is how we do the prompt. We give some demonstration first before we ask the query. I think this thing you guys are probably more familiar with right now. End of the day, we got, as I mentioned, 2,400 human participants to evaluate the generated content. We evaluate it using these 5 dimensions. Number 1, we want to rate the tweet whether it's hateful or not, from 1 being non-hateful to 5 very hateful, right? And then we want to rate. So the first one is the only special one, is to rate the hatefulness of the tweet. The rest of the evaluation is on the generated explanation. So we want to rate whether the explanation is fluent, whether it provides you enough information, whether it's persuasive, whether it's logically sound. Okay, so this is what is evaluated on. This is how the result actually looks like. We got something very interesting out from it. So what we can see from here is very interesting, right? The quality of hateful explanation, right, are genuinely higher than the non-hateful ones. So for example, on the fluency, right, you can see that so fluency is not so bad. So fluency, you can see that, let's say we ask for a given tweet, why is it hateful? The fluency of the generated explanation is more fluent, or the user actually ability to be more fluent for hateful content, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is what we get. Now, by providing both hateful and non-hateful explanation, it did not make it more informative or more persuasive. I need this one. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. We thought that, by showing 2 sides of the house, showing you why this is hateful, why this is not hateful, is actually more informative. But it doesn't work out this way. The crowdsource annotators, right, don't think this is the case. Okay, so we can only prompting for the only context is also not very helpful. So if you ask for the context, right, you can see that the fluency is okay, but the informativeness is not too good, persuasiveness is not too good, soundness is also not so good. Okay. The problem is this one. Okay, we want to know what is the effect on hatefulness of the tweet. Remember, right, we come with this conception, right, to say that we want to know, let's say, right, if you perform, let's see, this one, right? So when we say, right, why something is hateful, okay, and then that particular tweet itself, right, is non-hateful. I give you a tweet, I ask the model to explain to me why this is hateful, okay? The score for this particular person, right, actually increased. With no explanation, right, when they read this particular tweet, it's 3.16. After he sees the explanation, he thinks that actually this is more hateful. This is problematic because the original label for this content, right, is non-hateful. When you are not showing any explanation, it is aligned. It thinks that this is not hateful. But when you show him that that model says that this is hateful, it is persuaded to think that this is hateful. Likewise, okay, if the content is actually not hateful, if the content is hateful, okay, originally, when there's no explanation, right, on the 5 scale, right, 3.96 is quite high. It thinks that this kind of contents are hateful, okay, but when it's being prompted to explain why is it non-hateful, the score actually drops significantly, right? So what we do know is this: we don't know whether GPT-3 is correct or wrong, or whether it's able to understand hate speech or not. What we do know is this: it's very persuasive. It will persuade the human moderators to think something is hateful or not hateful. He will sway the opinion of the annotators. Okay? So it's not so much about whether the model is correct or wrong. Right now, the issue that we are having is that the human is now being influenced by the AI into thinking whether something is hateful or not. This is the biggest takeaway that we submitted this to the different social media companies. Okay? So what we told them is this: what we do know, back then, GPT-3 is already very persuasive. Right now, GPT-4 is even more persuasive. Okay, so actually in this particular case, the prompts actually matters. So this was our biggest takeaway for the different companies on this. Okay, we further examine the mislabeling of the tweets, the hatefulness in different prompt setting. We know something very interesting, right? So we thought that, okay, if it's so persuasive, right, why presenting both sides of the argument, saying that why is it hateful, why is it not hateful, didn't help, right? It turns out that because when you show two explanations, the explanation is too long. The content moderators didn't read all the way to the end. So it did not scroll. So we have this scroll and don't scroll. If the content moderators have the patience to scroll all the way to the end, the performance improved by a lot. But the issue is that the explanation is too long. The person may not want to scroll all the way to the end. So when designing the explanation, this thing actually comes into consideration as well, right? The time taken to moderate the content. Because per day, right, the content moderators, right, might be asked to moderate in tens of thousands of content that's coming in. They don't have so much time to spend on each content, right? So this is the problem that we face. How do we design better things on this? It's something that we look at also. Okay, I think I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes to talk about something a little bit different. I've been sharing quite a fair bit on the text part, so I want to tell you a little bit more about the multimodality as part of this particular conference, right, on multimodality. Maybe I talk a little bit more about memes. Memes is something that's interesting, okay? Hateful memes target communities or individuals by portraying them in a bad manner. This is what the memes are that we are looking at. This is a very, very challenging research problem because the hateful context from multimodality is an issue, and you need a lot of contextual information to get it to work, okay? I'll give you an example. Let's look at this one, right? If you look at the text itself, let's not look at the image. For the last time, I'm not Michelle Obama. Okay, if you look at the text, it's not hateful. If you look at the image, it's also not hateful. It's an image of a gorilla, right? But if you combine the two, then this becomes very hateful, right? So this is the problem that we face in memes, right? It needs to consider the reasoning in two modality, fuse it together before you actually make a decision on whether something's hateful or not. So that's the challenge for this, okay? So in the past, how do we do this? In the past, in the early days, when Facebook launched the Hateful Meme Challenge, okay, this is a hateful memes example for folks who have Muslim friends. You know that they don't take pork, right? So if you look at the memes itself, text is good, right? Best holiday gift for Muslim, not hateful. Image, not hateful, but you combine the two, is hateful, okay? So the current way of handling this is that they put in the textual modality, the image modality, encode them, put it into a visual language model, and then you perform the prediction. The issue with this kind of approach, right, is that it doesn't leverage on the contextual information, and it relies a lot on supervised learning. But the issue is that we don't have that many memes to basically do the supervised learning. Okay? What we then propose, I think since 2022, was to use and leverage the language models to do this. Okay? So I actually have a bigger image to show. Okay, this is a better approach to show this. Okay, so we take this particular language model, right? I mean visual language model, clip art. What we do is that we demonstrate. We say that, okay, this is a normal non-hateful meme. We put in, we tell the meme text is as such. Okay, the meme captions is as such, putting cheese, basically describing the image, right? Image caption, and then the template says is good. Basically, you say that this image is okay. Okay. Now, if you put in this one, again, there's a meme text, there's a meme description, and you say that the template is bad, okay? You are leveraging on the language models, prompting it to extract out the caption plus the meme text, and then, using this output, taking it as an input for Robota, so basically generate the prediction. So that was what we did 2 years ago in EMNLP, okay? We tested this with the Facebook hateful memes and one other open source memes data set. Okay, this was the result. So 2 years ago, this was the state of the art. We had some issues trying to beat this over the years, but right now I think our recent work this year from ACM multimodal, we managed to beat this really. Right now I think many of the works out there that's doing hateful memes are using prompting strategy to do this. Okay, but there is a downside to this. So again, I want to share about the failure, right? If you look at the error analysis, these are things that are supposed to be, for example, right, the ground truth for this one is considered hateful, right? So obviously, okay, for folks who are Christian here, you probably be able to identify this is considered hateful, okay? The meme text, did it identify correctly? Yes, it identified correctly, okay? The original scarecrow. The caption, builder crucified on cross, also identified correctly. Entity, they also identified correctly, say that, crucifixion, life, resurrection, and whatnot. Everything is correct, but the prediction is not hateful. Why? Because the model, right, did not have that complex reasoning modality to basically understand the memes well. It may not have the contextual knowledge to basically do this. That becomes the problem. Okay? So it doesn't have the contextual knowledge, it doesn't have the complex reasoning capabilities to do multimodality reasoning. Therefore, it's resulting in this. Okay? Likewise for this one. Okay? When you date an Asian boy and you try to get into a family to accept you. Okay? So this one, human also have a hard time trying to understand this. You understand what's the hate speech on this? My students and human annotators had a hard time trying to understand this also. So they also say, yeah, actually, could it be a wrong label? Why is it considered hateful? It should be non-hateful. Actually, it's hateful. The hint for this particular meme is to say that, Asian eat dogs. Okay, so you see, there is very subtlety. Like even humans may not be able to get this ready. The model will even have a harder time to get this context, right? So likewise, there's a lot of these kind of things that's happening in the model. Okay, so again, the limitation for this is that first of all, we need to convert image to text because large language models can do better reasoning than the visual ones. Okay, but more importantly, I think complicated reasonings is needed, which is now absent. The good news is we are right now testing O1, GPT-O1, with the complex reasoning. We see whether it can perform this better. Okay. And of course, the model may be biased itself. Okay, these are the new works that we have did since the 2022 EMNLP. We explore a lot of other things to try to basically perform more complex reasoning to this. So we have done things like prompting more questions, extracting out more information to see whether this kind of information can help in the classification task. Or, we want to use modularized networks. For example, there's 3 modules that we introduced. Hateful memes classification, hateful meme explanation, and I think meme captioning, right? So the 3 modules are all being used to create this module composer. This is our latest work from this year web conference. Okay, so this was what we did. Currently, state-of-the-art model is this one, the one that we just had. The performance is okay, but I thought it is still unsolved issue on the reasoning part. Okay, because what we tried to do was to give it more information, but having more information doesn't necessarily mean that the reasoning capabilities has improved, and that's the problem with this one. Okay, good. I'm coming to the end. Last 2 minutes. So this too remains an open issue, right? Data set inconsistency in data annotation, imbalanced data set. Restricted to text-based. So that is no longer true, I felt. For text-based, right, it's no longer that restrictive anymore. We actually have more non-text data right now, okay? There are models issue also, mostly supervised, heavily dependent on label. That is if you want to pre-train everything from scratch. Right now, we leverage on the visual language models to do this, okay? But the later part is quite true, which is to adapt to the evolving lexicon. This part cannot be solved right now, okay? And there's bias in the model. These are the research opportunity right now on hate speech. So if you're interested, the implicit one remains a difficult task, even for ChatGPT. Some of them you might not be able to understand yourself also. The implicit one, you can check them out. Multilingual, multicultural remains something that's difficult. Even for Korea side, with a new data set, you might not capture the evolving lexicon. How do we tackle this? Going beyond text, dealing with other modalities is something that we are keen about, right? Memes, videos, and so on and so forth. Propagation of hate speech. This is very, very understudied because it's a very sensitive topic. Because we are trying to figure out in the network, if someone is hateful, does it make your friends or your entire network gets more hateful towards a particular target? Yeah, but this is an important topic that has been understudied in this space. And of course, because hate speech is rather subjective, so we are trying to improve the annotation network also in here. Okay. So this is one of the projects that we are working on right now. It's on low resource language. It's linked to the SGHcheck works. So right now we are doing for Southeast Asia, dealing with low resource language hate speech detection and content moderation. Okay. This was the crowdsource plugin that we created. Now you can actually install this on Google Chrome. Basically, it's a plugin for you to visit any website. You can flag out hate speech. We can actually capture all this kind of evolving lexicon to help train the model on this. So we are in the pilot of this. We are working with a Germany university to try this out in Germany. Okay, on this part. Yeah, and they are quite interested in looking at this. In fact, I can just show you a quick clip on this. I think there's no sound. Yeah, right. Is it a bit blur? Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is how the plugin looks like. This is just Twitter. You can actually open the plugin, key in, flag out what you think is hateful, type in the reasoning and all. We are in the midst of developing this. If you're interested in this, we can chat more. We are working on a new paper for Kai on this. Yeah. Okay, so that's for this. We also want to work on this on the live stream content moderation content. This is a very difficult task because you are trying to detect the content live, right? That means that you guys are actually on live feed, and then if someone uses vulgarity or spread certain hate speech, how do we capture it, moderate live? This is a very difficult task. And of course, this is something that TikTok has approached us because they are very interested in this. We have spoken to Twitch also because they also do a lot of live streaming. We don't have a foolproof solution for this yet, but we have started the work on this. Instead of doing it live, right now we have contributed a new data set on hateful video detection on short clips under 30 seconds. Okay, so 60 seconds, 1 minute clip. So given a video, we want to detect whether it's hateful or not. Challenge is that there is only one other hateful video data set available. Now there's two plus what we have contributed this year from ACMMM, and then there's a need to model more modalities to handle this. Okay, it's a very difficult task because you need to model text, visual, and audio. Audio is not the big problem. The problem is the visual. Because the visual, right, you cannot have it as a static one image. In video, we need to look at it as a sequence. And we are not just interested to identify, detect whether something is hateful. We want to know which is the segment that's hateful. So this is very tough. Okay, so this is something that we are looking at right now. Okay, right. So that's my last slide. In sum, I think hate speech is still a challenging problem. It's ongoing. Existing automated hate speech detection methods have good performance, but you also have a lot of limitations, as I've shared. And there's a lot of research and commercial opportunities in this domain. Okay, and if you're interested in this, feel free to reach out to me. We can have a more chat on this. Okay, so this is again one of the research that we are working on, and we do many other social-related research as well, social-related AI research as well. Okay, with this, thank you for the invitation to this presentation.